Well, I guess I'm a manga channel now, so I may as well talk about the new big thing. We all know about Kagurabachi, right? That one manga that memed itself into success. While the memes are great, there's a lot more meat on Kagurabachi's bones than the jokes would lead you to believe. I mean, how else would it have won first place in the next manga awards? From the action, to the art, to the story, it's all so good, and it's only made better by it actually having a point. The author, Takeru Hokazono, puts a lot of effort into the tiny details to make his story work as well as it does. But these details are so tiny, a lot of people actually miss them, so like the mega awesome and super reliable guy I am, I've decided to tell you the meaning behind Kagurabachi. To start, let's start with the start. The protagonist of this manga, Chihiro Rokuhira. He seeks revenge for his father's murder and to collect the 6 enchanted blades that were stolen from the family. It's his face that's been front and center of the many memes, and I see why. He does have a very good face. But seriously, I get why he got memed on. This one panel from the first chapter did him no favors, but it was necessary for establishing the character. I had to blot out the words for copyright reasons, but it says, "So every day I start the morning with fresh hatred," which is just like the edgiest thing he could have said. But you know what? He's fucking lying. Chihiro so desperately wants to be Sasuke when he's Naruto. He has to actively tell himself every morning to seek revenge because that's just not who he is. In the first chapter, his first instinct when dealing with the Yakuza isn't to fight, it's diplomacy. It's only after seeing the bodies that he goes, maybe it's time to start killing people. It's only after seeing the bodies does he decide to kill. Don't let that trench coat fool you. Despite dressing like a school shooter, the one thing he never fails to do is save people. Yeah, it's going to be super ultra mega bloody, but it also shows that he has a good heart. The contrast helps you understand that this grim, gritty edginess is just for show. It's why when he confronts his father's murderer, the question that pierces through all other thoughts above the enchanted blades the story is actually about is simply, why did you kill my father? He's just a kid who had his father stolen from him and desperately fights to maintain that legacy. Chihiro is the world's softest uwu boy. Dude legit spends his time saving children like he's Captain Planet. And it's a great bait and switch in regards to our protagonist, immediately letting us know that Chihiro is more complicated than he appears. And the same can be said for the entire story, because while it is about Chihiro, it is not about Chihiro. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. Let me try that again. Kagurabachi is about Chihiro in the sense that he's the point of view and we follow his journey. But the main idea, and whose actions are often discussed as a way for the story to talk about its themes, is someone else. That being Kunoshige Rokuhira, Chihiro's daddy and everyone else's daddy. Okay, so my lawyer has advised me that that last joke was out of pocket, but I will not apologize for it. Putting the people who want to fuck Chihiro's dad aside for now, to understand what makes Kunoshige so important, we have to go into more depth with the setting. Kagurabachi takes place in magical Japan after the Seitei War. It was Chihiro's father who virtually put an end to the war himself by creating the enchanted blades. With 5, Japan fought on equal footing, and with the 6th, they won, cementing Kunoshige Rokuhira as a national hero and his swords as national treasures. But Kunoshige doesn't really see it that way, because things are always more complicated than they appear. Yes, those swords won the war, but they did it by taking lives. So many lives. In chapter 1, we actually see Kunoshige explain to his son that no matter what, katanas are still tools for killing people, and as their creators, they are complicit in the deaths they cause. And just like with Chihiro, our perception is thrown off. When this goofy single father suddenly starts discussing the ethics of his craft and his complicity in murder, we understand that things are more complicated than they seem at first glance. These swords save the country, but they can just as easily doom it if they fall into the wrong hands. And Kunoshige would be responsible for that because he's the one who created the swords that made it possible. And that's what Chihiro is reckoning with throughout the story, knowing that his dad is Oppenheimer, who created weapons of mass destruction, in his fight to get all the swords back lest the world realize what their national hero created. The reason I'm beginning by laying this groundwork is because the manga did it too. The point of the first few chapters, letting us know the who, where, and why, is all so we can finally begin with the what. And this all comes to a head and finally lets us move to the meat of the video, where Kagurabachi really began strutting his stuff. That being with the president of the Kunishige fan club, Genichi Sojo. Since I don't have a better place to put these, I'm just going to give you 1, a spoiler warning, and 2, a like, subscribe, and check out my Ko-fi and Patreon. Real talk, I'm just impressed I managed to talk for 5 minutes about the first 2 chapters of this manga. That's how you know it's goated. Anyways, Sojo is the manga's first major antagonist of its first major arc, the Versus Sojo arc, which is a really lame name for a really good arc. The arc starts with Chihiro meeting a child named Char who speaks of a magic sword with the ability to control clouds, the enchanted blade Kurigumo, aka Cloud Gouger. Sojo is not only the one who kidnapped Char, but the one who wields this sacred blade. Sojo did not steal the blade, he was given it by the ones that did, and the entire reason he wants Char is for his special abilities to try and make an enchanted blade of his own. That's because he loves Kunishige Rokuhira. But this fruity bastard loves him in an entirely different way than Chihiro or even what the memes would have you believe. He loves Kunishige in the same way an author looks up to Tolkien or George Martin. Sojo is infatuated with the man's work, but he views it in an entirely different way than his son. The idea that these swords were created to protect the weak makes Sojo sick to his stomach. These swords are instruments of war, tools for slaughter, and as their first fight ends, both Chihiro and Sojo are left to consider what the other person meant. And that's what the Versus Sojo arc is actually about. In a literal sense, it's Chihiro fighting to protect Char and reclaim Cloud Gouger, but the substance is one giant conversation on what the enchanted blades mean. It's why I think that one of the most beloved parts of the manga is during the climax when both Sojo and Chihiro simply sit down to eat some dango and literally talk it out. It doesn't feel like an abrupt interruption to the action because it isn't. It's just a continuation of what the arc has been discussing this entire time brought to the forefront. And I find Sojo's answer to the question fascinating because he decides that what Kunishige had in mind when making the swords doesn't matter. It's what they mean to him that does. To keep my metaphor of Tolkien and Martin where I compare the swords to like books and stuff, Chihiro is a bit of a, let's just say textual literalist. Ignoring that that's a law term, what I mean is that Chihiro subscribes to the idea that the sword's meaning is what the creator intended. His father created the swords to protect the weak, so that's their purpose. However, Sojo takes a much more death of the author approach where the meaning of the enchanted blades are based on what they mean to him over what the author states. It's why he tells Chihiro he doesn't want to hear about Kunishige because he doesn't matter. Basically, Sojo is one of those Sigma Bateman accounts you see on Twitter. Chihiro is like, what the fuck, you're not supposed to idolize this guy, and Sojo's like, don't care, he's cool to me. What's interesting is that the manga does not say that Sojo is wrong. Just like how a Sigma Bateman account can say, how is he supposed to not be cool when he's rich and thriving? Sojo can say, how are these swords not meant for slaughter when they respond to my will? And at the same time, Chihiro isn't wrong either. These swords are meant to protect the weak. He got Kuro shred when he was trying to save Char. Chihiro only gains victory not when he accepts Sojo's idea that the swords are killing machines, but that their meaning is a matter of perspective. He understands that in Sojo's hands, these swords really are weapons of mass destruction, which is exactly why he has to cut him down. That's why in the flashback following Chihiro's acceptance of Sojo's ideas, shown by him eating the dango, we're told, you're gonna have to look at the world through your own eyes. It's Chihiro's dad literally telling him, what I wanted from these swords doesn't matter. You're gonna have to come up with your own idea. It's why I consider chapter 17 to be one of the best in the entire manga. It's an entire discussion about the meaning of someone's work, and it brings that theme to the forefront by interrupting the action with a fucking tea break. Hell, the discussion might be more important than the action because if it wasn't, the chapter wouldn't be called Tea. Do you know how hard it is to literally interrupt the fight between your arc's final boss with a conversation and have it work? It's like if Luffy and Kaido stopped in the middle of their fight to play video games. And I'm pretty sure the conversation doesn't actually happen. It's all a metaphor for what they're fighting about in reality. And even Sojo's death is interesting. In his final moments, thinking he has finally reached Kunishige's level, Sojo reaches out to the Dantanseki, the magical, untamable ore that makes the enchanted blades. But it still doesn't respond to him, so he asks what's missing. And the answer is obvious. Let's look at the time we see Kunishige at the forge. We don't know if this is him making Inten or just a regular blade, but regardless, he's still making a blade. And who's that right alongside him? Chihiro. Or even after Sojo fails to tame the Dantanseki, we see Chihiro say the only reason he won that battle was thanks to Char. Just as the battle could not be won by one person alone, the Dantanseki could not be tamed by one person alone. Sure, Sojo understood the enchanted blades, but he did not understand Kunishige or the Dantanseki. This could be read as Sojo failing as a creator by desperately chasing after someone else. He was emulating Kunishige when he should have been saying, nah, I'ma do my own thing. Sojo is a great antagonist, and it's entirely unsurprising that he was where Kagurabachi started making headway. Future Fuuri here, a Patreon supporter of mine, cough, link in the description, cough, actually made a really potent metaphor to explain the ending of the arc. Kunishige is like the late Akira Toriyama, and the enchanted blades are like Goku. Just because Sojo understood what made Goku such a goated character doesn't mean he can create the next Goku, and certainly not the next Dragon Ball. Before we move on to the next major antagonist of the next major arc, there's a small breathing point in between which is really important for setting things up later. Think of it as the Long Ring Longland before Water 7. I'm not sure if this little bit is a real mini-arc, it might just be part of what follows, but I'm calling this section the Battle of the Bad Bitches. It's when Chihiro comes into conflict with the Kamunabi, who are basically the powers that be, you know, this story's version of the Jujutsu higher-ups or Senjo 46, yada yada yada. The Kamunabi want to get Chihiro's enchanted blade, and to that end they send Tafuku and Mami, Hiyuki Kagiri. If the battle against Sojo is all about what the enchanted blades mean to you, this entire arc is about what the enchanted blades mean to others. And the battle with Hiyuki introduces that idea to us by bringing it to the forefront. The Kamunabi understands the danger the enchanted blades pose. They use the swords for the war after all. We understand that danger too. The Kamunabi sent an entire squad of elite sorcerers to try and take the blade from Sojo, and all but 2 died. All it takes is someone like Sojo causing a massacre, which we see him try to do for people's opinions of these swords to change, and for Kunishige Rokuhira to go from national hero to national villain. It calls into question Chihiro's actions with his own enchanted blade because he's also wielding such power selfishly. Now I already know what you're thinking. You literally said Chihiro spends like half the manga saving people. And yeah, that's totally true, Chihiro is a good little boy, but you're forgetting 2 other big parts of his character. He wants to collect the blades to preserve his father's legacy and then to claim vengeance on those who killed his dad. And he's wielding Enten, an enchanted blade, for that, to his own benefit. Kagurabachi is a story all about revenge, and if Hiyuki didn't have a point, Chihiro wouldn't have wavered. But like I said, this part of the manga is all about what those enchanted blades mean to others, which is where I introduce Akuri Sazanami. He was there when Sojo nearly killed a bunch of people, and he thinks that if these swords can commit a massacre, then they can just as easily prevent it, so Chihiro should keep wielding that blade. It's why Akuri says the blade suits Chihiro, because the blade can do a lot of good in the hands of someone like him, whose selfish desires are still moral. The fight between Hiyuki and Chihiro doesn't actually get a proper ending as it's interrupted, but that suits the nature of the battle, which is to introduce and bring up ideas that will be the focus of the following chapters. Those ideas being selfish actions and whether they can be right or wrong, and the way we judge the value of things like the enchanted blades. Following this, Chihiro is put up against the Rakuzaichi, an auction held by the Sazanami clan, to which Akuri hails from, even if he is the clan washout. The arc's quite packed to be totally honest, so I won't be able to cover everything, there's just not enough time in the day. But what I will address is Chihiro's second meeting with Hiyuki because she's actually going against orders. The Kamunabi fully intend on just buying the enchanted blade since this is an auction. And it calls a lot of what Hiyuki said during her first interaction into question and makes her second guess herself. The manga puts the common conception of morality on its head, where selfishness can be good and altruism can be bad. Like, the Kamunabi are overlooking the Rakuzaichi to buy the enchanted blade, despite the fact that it traffics human beings. Like, I get it, keeping the enchanted blade, especially Kunishige's masterpiece, from falling into the hands of criminals is important. Keep in mind, the Shinuchi seems less like a katana and more like a war crime stick, so it's a big fucking deal the Kamunabi get it. But at the same time, cool motive, still human trafficking. And the arc places a heavy focus on the human toll that the Kamunabi are willing to overlook. We see Chihiro save a child who is desperately and naively trying to get his sister back. We even see a victim kill herself to avoid being sold. Is the altruistic choice to opt for the enchanted blade to save the most people, especially when you can just save the victims afterwards? Probably. Is choosing to crush the Rakuzaichi simply because you're so done with dealing with the bureaucratic bullshit and utilitarian morality a selfish choice on Hiyuki's part? Yeah, but Hiyuki is right to do it, just as Chihiro is right to save people if it means preserving his father's legacy. I think the overall message behind this theme is that a good thing is still good even if it's done for a bad reason. The second big thing the arc focuses on is what the enchanted blades mean to others. Though I am admittedly being kind of over-reductive with that. Yes, the value of enchanted blades are a big part of this arc, but it's also the value of things in general. And to that end, I really like the choice to have this arc take place and focus on an auction. A place that's all about subjective value, and Hakuri Sazanami is at the heart of this theme. Like I said, Hakuri is the clan's washout. In the Sazanami's history, there has never been someone so utterly incompetent at sorcery. He was so useless, we see Hakuri's family step up to fill that gap. Hakuri's younger brother Tenri sacrifices himself to make up for Hakuri's inability. And his older brother Soya uses a form of tough love, trying to teach him that he's so useless no one will take him in, so he should stay with the Sazanami family who will accept him anyway. Even his father, and main antagonist of the arc, Kyora Sazanami, lets him go without much of a fuss. He's too weak to fight them, and the information he has is pretty much just lies, so there's no real harm in cutting ties. That is, until Hakuri realizes his power, which isn't just the offensive Iso, but the ability to access the pocket dimension where they store all their merchandise. Hakuri isn't some washout, he's rarer than a generational talent that rivals the Sazanami clan founder. Hakuri isn't Naruto, he's Itachi. No, wait a minute, isn't Naruto already a dude who sucks but is secretly goated with a sauce? So yeah, he's actually just Naruto. I originally didn't like the development because it was a very convenient way for the plot to keep going. Having the clan failure turn out to be a once-a-century level genius with both sides of the Sazanami sorcery is shitty isekai powers in terms of being instantly OP. But this was tempered by Hakuri frying his brain so bad he looks like Sukuna after an unlimited void. He hasn't even recovered by the next arc, showing the real consequences of an amateur going all out balls to the walls with brand new sorcery. So even when he recovers, he's probably not going to be able to do the same stuff he did at the Rakuzaichi, but it also ties into the larger theme of the arc. I talked about it before with the choice to have the arc take place in an auction house, that being subjective value, and just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Chihiro valued Hakuri's information, but that was the wrong choice because Kyora ensured it was wrong to begin with. But Chihiro didn't overlook his talent with sorcery, noting how he survived getting boned by Hiyuki, getting hit with Hiyuki's flaming boner, getting hit by Hiyuki's flame bone of the starving, which should have killed someone who wasn't a sorcerer. He saw value the Sazanami didn't, which ties into the larger theme of the arc. Like I said, subjective value is a real big part of this arc because we still aren't done addressing it. To that end, we need to talk about the Procedure-in-Chief, Kyora Sazanami, head auctioneer of the Rakuzaichi and the main antagonist of the arc. The biggest facet of his character, and what got me into high heaven, is the dude's ability to proceed. Chihiro invades the auction? Proceed. Hiyuki shows up and starts boning your henchmen? Proceed. The toe, your strongest soldiers, and your kids get taken out? Proceed. Chihiro invades your storehouse, grenades get thrown into the crowd, and you get a lethal wound. Proceed. This man's more dedicated than the USPS because people could be dying, he could be dying, and the dude would still proceed. But as much as it gets memed on, his desire to proceed is a very big part of his and the Sazanami's character. Their elite group of sorcerers, the Toe, Kyora's children, are a lot like Chihiro in their overwhelming dedication to their father, sacrificing their lives for him in the Rakuzaichi. We even get to see Kyora being handed the title of Patriarch, showing that even he's subject to the shackles of legacy. It ties the arc into the manga's larger overall theme by letting Chihiro actually see what sacrificing yourself to preserve someone's legacy actually looks like. It makes the Toe a nice foil to Chihiro. They have the same dedication he has to their father. Even when they see that Tenri died for a fake door, they just double down, valuing the Raikuzachi over everything. And the sheer value the Sazanami plays on the auction is something the manga stresses time and time again. There's a great bit of symbolism when Kyora wavers, wondering if sacrificing everything for the Rakuzaichi was the right choice, thinking of a happy future he could have had, but instead he doubles down, literally shattering the hypothetical future with his gavel. In his final moments, he wonders if he valued things as he should. Was he right to value the Rakuzaichi over his family, even admitting that he fucked up big time by misjudging Akuri? And with that final question, he passes on. And I really like the ambiguity of his last line. He admits his mistakes, but doesn't say what. Should he have valued Akuri and put him towards the Rakuzaichi? Or should he have prioritized his family over the Rakuzaichi like his late wife said? It adds a good layer of depth and uncertainty, considering it's a question we will never get a clear answer for. I do think the Rakuzaichi arc is probably stronger than the Versus Sojo arc in a lot of ways. On some levels, it feels more holistic, having more characters and moving pieces and fitting them all into the arc-specific themes like subjective value and into the greater themes like legacy. At the same time, it's also more transparent than the Versus Sojo arc, where a lot of the effort has to be dedicated to figuring out the metaphor. But I do feel like the Versus Sojo arc had a stronger message behind its meaning than the Raikuzachi. The Rakuzaichi arc puts a lot of emphasis and pretty much dedicates an entire character, that being Akuri, to its ideas of subjective value. If I had to give the Rakuzaichi arc a single meaning, it'd definitely be to never take your assumptions for granted. Think of how everyone assumed Akuri was useless when he wasn't, or how Chihiro and the Toe assumed the door in the basement led to the storehouse. There's also the assumption that the Shinichi seal would take 10 years to open when it was actually done in 3. And regarding Ayuki, the manga asks us to question our assumption of right and wrong for the greater good. She thinks fighting for our country is the right thing to do, but the Kamunabi voluntarily expose themselves to evil for the sake of the so-called greater good of buying the Shinichi. And at that point, if you want to stop evil, why listen to their orders? The manga even challenges us and Chihiro on the assumption that fighting for your father's legacy is a good idea, with the Toe and especially Kyora. It's these questions that are part of what made Kagurabachi so popular. It provides room for discussion, giving the readers something to post and comment about. The next arc after the Rakuzaichi, tentatively named the Swordbearer's arc, is in full swing. While it's too early for me to say anything about it now, if this video does well, you'll certainly be hearing my thoughts about it. So once more, be sure to like and subscribe. It's time for me to end this video. It really has gone on way longer than I thought it should. I expected this to be like 16 minutes, and here we are at over 20. Starting with our Patreon shoutouts, for our 3 stars, we have special thanks to Choran, SkyKing64, 87 Werrell, Garen LaFay, Zora Chow, and Mervonla. For 4 stars, we have Miko and Utterly Awe, the dual demagogues. And for our super duper special 5-star shoutouts, we have first, Vanilla Flower, the kindly forest elder. Second, Spidey Zack, the pillar of heaven. Then, the good old days, the Iron Professor. Followed by Hodari Lion, the gazer of the brightest stars. Thank you for watching. Do be sure to like and subscribe. As always, this is Fuuri signing out.